Hi everybody, this is Cyrus Hojadi. Today is November 17th, 2018. I wanted to take this time to do a review video of many other YouTube channels that I have talked about and it's been floating around across YouTube in the past. And one of those channels happens to be the Red Elephants. Now, the Red Elephants is correct in many points. Now, I've wanted to have a discuss with Vincent James on a lot of the topics he's talked about, but he hasn't replied. I suggest you do send him a message. And I do agree with him on a large number of issues. The fact is that this feminism, this single moms, fatherless homes, divorce rates is a problem. These demographic changes are a concern because areas that tend to have a certain demographic succeed in many aspects, and that we need to stop this propaganda of multiculturalism, massive immigration. We see that reality doesn't reflect the nice buzzwords as we were led to believe. But again, the problem with channels like Red Elephant, Stefan Molyneux, American Renaissance, Red Ice, is that they don't have a lot of efficient organization. They rely too much on ballot boxes, and instead of actually organizing people nationally and globally, especially at the local level, in every major city across America, and take to the streets and demand change and file reports, file lawsuits, protest, demand laws to change instead of all that. Because if you look at history, organizing is what really gets things done in our society. That's one of the things that you really have to understand. But anyway, I just want to point out, I want to respond to this video that he has made that monoculture countries are the safest for everyone. Let's take a look.
Okay, so an interesting article appeared in my timeline from the Liberty Institute of Canada, and it gets into telling the truth. Telling a lot of the truth, and a lot of the stuff that I've been saying on this channel for quite some time. As controversial as some of the things might sound, they are true. This particular article talks about, the headline is, monocultural countries are always the most peaceful.
That's absolutely true in a lot of cases. However, of course, nevertheless, if you look at some cities like San Diego, they're pretty diverse and they don't have one of the highest violent crime rates in the world. Now, Africa is pretty monocultural in many ways, but it doesn't have the most peaceful environments. He does have a good point. If you look at Iceland, if you look at many countries like, I would say, Latvia, Japan, they are very successful in many ways. So let's talk about this. Now, by the way, it's important to know that crime levels, of course, are different among the races. If you see African civilizations, they're the most violent. And if you look at Northeast Asian civilizations, they're the least violent. And a lot of people believe that it's not just the development of the country. A lot of it has to do because on average, and this is what has been mentioned by Jared Taylor, that people who are African descent have a higher blood testosterone level than other races. And they do vary across the board. Now, this is where I kind of disagree with Vincent James, is the fact that he talks about that much of the crime increases a lot of it has to do with immigration. And that's just really not the large part of it. A lot of it has to do with the promotion of drugs, the destruction of family, the effects of Black America after the Civil Rights Movement, the fact that we're seeing an increase of fatherless homes. Immigration is not the main cause. As a matter of fact, yes, it's true that we have a problem with MS-13, sanctuary cities, and I feel sorry for the angel moms. And certainly that's a large part of it. But again, that does not still justify the fact that immigration is a large part of the crime that we have in our society. It's certainly not the problem in America. It certainly is the part in a few cities in America, and it certainly is the part in Europe. Now, of course, keep that in mind, though, that yes, I do agree with Vincent James. We have a lot of problems with immigration. We have a housing shortage. It doesn't make sense to flood in more people. Wages are falling. These immigrants come in. They get a lot of public services. They tend to vote for more taxes. They give us a lot of these crony politicians like you've seen in New York State and the state of California. And of course, recently here in Nevada. And as a matter of fact, yes, it does deliver a lot of problems. Nevertheless, of course, the issue is that if you don't provide accurate data to the public, like Vincent James is sort of doing, then people will not take all your data information more seriously. And that's why you need to be accurate with your data as much as I can. And again, this is not an attack video with Vincent James. I'm just trying to correct him. I'm just trying to provide my own perspective. And by the way, I think Vincent James needs to talk about a lot of other topics that I think are also very important. The banking fraud, Wall Street, possibly another panic, the Federal Reserve. He needs to talk about the US dollar. He needs to talk more about income inequality. He also needs to talk more about the people that really run and control the world, possibly like the Jesuits, the Vatican, the Zionists, and a lot of other things more often. I've talked about the possibility that these people have a lot of control. Now let's just go on with the video.
Always the safest, and that is the truth. This is coming right as an aggravated assault have tripled per 100,000 people since the 1950s here in America.
Okay, so I've just talked about that not all of this is really because of immigration. Now, you also can compare it to 1980. America was a higher percentage of them were white, but our violent crime rates was much higher than it was in 2016. Now, another problem with Vincent, he doesn't also talk about 1910 or the early 20th century, how there was a lot of white immigrants that came in, and a lot of them created a lot of crime. Have you ever heard of Al Capone? Have you heard of the Italian mafias? The mafias coming from Ireland, shows like Sopranos, Godfather, The Departed. You know, we've had a lot of crime problem coming from whites back in the day. So one of the reasons why crime levels went down heading towards after World War II, because America was a superpower, we were having prosperity, we had strong family units, and the economy was really beneficial at that time. The middle class was booming, okay? And so that's why you had very, very low crime rates, nevertheless. So just keep this in mind. And nevertheless, of course, crime rates for black Americans were much, much lower. Yes, of course, it was higher than whites, but of course, the way life existed back in the day, the order that we had was certainly much different. Now, I just want to give some statistics to kind of debunk Vincent James, sort of, about what he's talking about. So he talks a lot about immigration bringing crime problems. Now, this is the data coming from the United States cities by crime rate. And you can see the crime rates that are over 250,000 people, the safest in America, is Irvine, California. This is very close to where Vincent James lives. And as a matter of fact, if you take a look at Irvine, California, you'll see that about 35 or 45% of the population is foreign born. Now you have to understand why. Well, there's a lot of good paying jobs. People are generally more educated or institutionalized, whatever you want to call it. And you can see here, believe it or not, let's look at the demographics of Irvine, California. Now you can see here that they've had a lot of immigration, but a lot of these immigrants are Asian. And Asian societies are one of the most least violent in America. Keep this in mind. So, and by the way, it's true that 45% of the people in Irvine are non-Hispanic, but a lot of that includes people like myself who are Iranian Americans. And Iranian Americans have the least crime rate than any other group, probably in the bottom 10. Now, yes, some immigrants are probably bringing a lot of crimes, like Somalis in Minnesota. Okay, so let's also take a look at some other data as well. Now, you can see right here looking at some other types of information, you will see that some of the areas that have one of the lowest violent crime rates, another in the list is El Paso. So we always talk about, okay, Latinos are coming in and committing crime. Yes, that's true in one case. But you can see here in El Paso, once we scroll down right here, you will see that nevertheless, El Paso is, in fact, about 80% Hispanic and Latino. And then once you go right here, you will also see that El Paso is on the bottom of the list for violent crime rates. Okay? So, and also keep that in mind. Yes, it's true that Latin American societies are violent, but they weren't always this way. Mexico wasn't as violent, I believe, about 50 years ago. And you can see here a lot of cities like Santa Ana that have a lot of Latinos are not really on the top of the list. But let's look at the top of the list. You can see here, top of the list, St. Louis, Detroit, Memphis, Baltimore. These are cities that are having one of the highest percentages of African Americans. Keep this in mind. Now, I also want to look at another important form of data. Now, let's take a look at Los Angeles County. And you can see here the crime rates, violent crime. You can see the least violent areas are generally the white areas, of course, that are often gated neighborhoods. You can see that a lot of areas with a lot of Asians are one of the least violent. So you can see here Arcadia. You can scroll down a lot of these other areas. And then, of course, the most violent areas you can see right here. Let's just scroll up and down. The most violent areas you can see, believe it or not, are, in fact, Compton, one of the highest percentages of blacks. Now, of course, you do take a look at Cudahy, the well-known sanctuary cities. It does have a violent crime problem, but it's really not as severe as a lot of people say it is. You can see Inglewood is on top of the list. Once you scroll down, look at this. Lancaster, Palmdale is above average. This is because a lot of blacks have fled the inner cities and have moved out there. And so, once again, yes, I do agree that we do have crime problems as a result of immigration, but it's not the main problems that we have. Now, I will also agree with Vincent James that, as a matter of fact, that homogenous societies are the societies where people get along, there's good neighbors, there's a lot of social activities, and I overall believe that homogenous societies are more successful. It isn't always the case. Diverse society isn't always bad, but overall, yes, there is a correlation. And yes, I do overall believe that, yes, we can reduce the crime rate if we secure the border, if we get rid of MS-13. However, the main crime problem in America is not our immigration problem, especially legal immigration as well. Now, I do know that there is an overall difference of crime rate among races. Of course, Asians and Europeans have the least crime rates, followed by people who are from the Middle East and Latin America, and then on the top of the list, people who are from African descent. So this is very, very understandable to know. Now, the thing about, I just wanted to point out, is that we do have a lot of immigration problems. And it's important to know that we get this truth out. It's important to know that I believe the most effective tool for immigration is that we need to pass a merit-based system. We need to pass the RACE Act. People come in with skills, values. There's a right appropriate amount, not just like 1.5 million a year. And we also have people that come in that know English very, very well. And of course, this immigration process of low-skilled, less desirable ones has badly affected really the Las Vegas economy. So this is one of the things that you have to really keep in mind. Now, to people like, I would say, red elephants, who are talking about, oh, these demographics are changing are a problem. I think it's better for you guys to gang up and have record numbers of children. And maybe that can stop the demographic change, because part of the problem is the low birth rates among white Americans. And especially that's the case among the coastal areas of America. Not so much a problem in states like Kansas, Utah, and so forth. But again, I think those states could even push the white birth rate even more, and then you'll stop having the demographic changes. And then all these radical organizations like Unidos US and so forth will realize their takeover is not going to happen. And then, of course, you have to understand that technology is going to be a much larger role to immigration than just voting in ballot boxes or people like Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Anyway, that's my take. Do what you can. Spread this video. Take care. God bless. And hopefully you can spread this video to people like Red Elephants and I can have a chat with him, because I think this is really, really worth it.